My office has reviewed the evidence surrounding the shootout with Christopher Wolf, and I have concluded the actions of Terrell police officers J.T. Pierce and Brian Boudreaux in returning fire when fired upon by Christopher Wolf were consistent with exercising self-defense to prevent serious bodily injury or death or to prevent the commission of forcible felony pursuant to Indiana statute. No criminal charges will be filed against these officers for their response to the initial shots fired by Christopher Wolf. As most people are aware, the actions of Christopher Wolf resulted in the shooting death of Officer Rob Pitts. We have reviewed the police reports, evidence collection reports, medical records, photographs, and the statements of various witnesses, including neighbors and law enforcement officers. Myself and two other members of the Vigo County Prosecutor's Office were at the scene while the on-scene investigation was taking place. The Indiana State Police conducted the scene processing and the subsequent investigation. It was determined that Christopher Wolf fired at least 4 shots total. It was further determined with reasonable certainty that Officer Pierce fired 2 shots when fired upon, and that Detective Boudreaux returned fire on Mr. Wolf with 2 or 3 shots. Indiana law applies equally to everyone, including law enforcement officers. This includes criminal laws, laws relating to self-defense, or the use of force related to an arrest. Unfortunately, police officers must sometimes respond to a situation with deadly force. This was one of those situations. When we have a situation where an officer is fired upon and potentially killed a suspect, it is our policy to request the Indiana State Police conduct an independent investigation. Once that is complete, we thoroughly review all of the evidence. In this case, the investigation evidence shows that the officers acted in self-defense, defense of a third person, and to prevent the commission of forcible felony, pursuant to Indiana statute. The officers also were justified in using deadly force to effect an arrest of a person whom the officers had probable cause to believe posed a threat of serious bodily injury to the officer or a third person. Criminal charges against the officers are not appropriate. The investigation into the officers' actions has reached its conclusion. Additionally, the autopsy of Christopher Wolf determined the manner of death for the suspect was suicide, with the cause of death being a gunshot wound to the head. An additional injury to his head suggests that the suspect may have been grazed by a shot or injured by a fragment during the gunfire. One additional person was charged as a result of this incident. We have determined that there are no additional suspects to consider for criminal charges at this time. As I'm bound to do, I would remind everyone that any charges discussed here are only allegations at this point, and that all suspects are considered innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. That concludes our statement, and if anyone has any questions, we'll be glad to address those. Also want to thank Terrell City Police, Chief Plassey, for their cooperation in this investigation, and also the Indiana State Police, Joe Watts, and the other officers in the Indiana State Police that conducted the investigation.
Can you tell us how many man-hours went into the investigation, how many people were interviewed?
There were tens of people interviewed, and there were hundreds of documentation that was compiled by the Indiana State Police and submitted to the Vigo County Prosecutor's Office. Such things as pictures from the scene, evidence collection from the scene, autopsy photos, photos at the hospital, photos at the scene, all kinds of written documentation. There were hundreds of pages presented to the Vigo County Prosecutor's Office.
Normally, we can quantify those things in pages. I didn't do that in this case, but I did check yesterday. It was 10.5 gigabytes worth of data that was provided to us for this investigation.
I mean, it's taken very seriously anytime there's a shooting, a police shooting, and so obviously a very thorough investigation is done in each case.